Thank you. MashaAllah. Thank you. You, you found the full length bio. MashaAllah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. نوينا التعلم والتعليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم والدعاء إلى الهدى والدلالة على الخير ابتغاء مرضات الله ووجهه وقربه والثواب. اللهم افتح علينا بحكمتك وانشر علينا برحمتك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. يا عليم علمنا من علمك ما ترضى به عنا ولا تؤاخذنا بما تعلمه منا. يا حليم خلقنا بخلق الحلم وحققنا بحقائق العلم. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Welcome everyone. Barakallahu feekum. This is a very, very special audience. You know, people who consider it to be important enough to wake up on a Saturday morning. It is Saturday, right? On a Saturday morning, yeah, it says right there on the clock. On a Saturday morning, and come and spend this hour and a half out here is, it's a big effort, mashallah. So, as much as we don't always pat ourselves on the back, it's probably good to pat yourself on the back right now. It's good, mashallah. It's a good thing to come in the morning and to do this. Miss Iman and the team have been trying to get me to come on Saturday mornings for a while, and I've told them over and over again that I have no business coming and speaking about parenting, and I still maintain my position that I have no business coming and speaking about parenting. I have a 4-year-old, and that's hard enough. And so the way we've angled this topic is so that I don't really have to talk about parenting as much as a skill that's important in parenting, which would be being aware of ourselves and learning to listen to ourselves and to others. And that's something that is very much central to chaplaincy, so I felt like I'm willing to do that. But when it comes to, there's many other people, mashallah, who have come to this program who are much more qualified to speak to the details of parenting. I'm a relatively new parent, and I find it to be very challenging and very, very difficult. So, alhamdulillah. So I'll tell you 2 Ismail stories. Ismail is my son. حفظه wa yahmihi min kulli su' wa awladukum kadhalik, inshallah. I'll tell you 2 Ismail stories to start. One of them to keep it light, to get us going, because I thought of it when she mentioned underground hip hop. So we were visiting someone recently, and that person they have a rabbit in their backyard. So Ismail was really excited to see the rabbit and to play with the rabbit and try to feed it and all of this kind of stuff. The rabbit's name is Pippin. Pippin from The Hobbit, from Lord of the Rings. So the rabbit's name was Pippin. So we're there for a little while, and Ismail's checking in on the rabbit again. We're like, Ismail, do you remember the rabbit's name? Do you know the rabbit's name? And he starts thinking about it. He says, yeah. So okay, so what's the rabbit's name? So the rabbit's name is Hip Hop. Rabbit's name is Hip Hop. I was like, okay, alhamdulillah. So that's good. And then these gorillas are not an act of shirk. Just so everyone knows, I didn't bring gorillas and put them on the table as an act of shirk. I put them on the table because Ismail slept with his play animals last night, and this morning when he woke up, he didn't want me to go, and I told him I had to go. So then he told me that he's going to give me the 2 gorillas so that I can remember him while I'm doing the lecture. So I promised him that I would take the gorillas and put them on the table. So the gorillas are with us, alhamdulillah. The session today is different than most anything I've actually ever done especially with, how do I say this? With the more experienced members of our community. With younger people in the community, we experiment with all kinds of different things, but with oftentimes the more experienced members of our community, the standard is essentially that you come to something and the person lectures and you go home. And that's really not even close to what this is going to be about today. So I just want to warn you in advance that the way that this session is going to be is that it's going to require a lot more interaction. First of all, with ourselves, each person individually, but also with one another. And I'm hoping that that will bear some fruit by the end, inshallah. So, I already made the disclaimer about parenting. And the other disclaimer is that I don't really deal very much with young children. That's why my 4-year-old is challenging for me. Young children are definitely not, people are always like, oh yeah, you're really good with the youth and stuff. I'm like, please be specific. If it's like 16 and up, I'm happy and I'm comfortable and I'm good to go. But anything below 16 is really tough territory for me. So my experience is really not with younger children. It's with older children. So I want to also make that clear in the beginning. I hope that people will kind of dive into the exercises and things and engage them. It's a little bit awkward. And so the first thing that we kind of want to talk about is, in order to learn how to listen to others, we have to first learn how to listen to ourselves. And some of you may have been here in the khutbah that I gave here, where I talked about that. I kind of very briefly touched on it, the idea of listening to ourselves. Many times that's very scary, because many of us are not accustomed to doing that. And there's many reasons for that. This is not a blame game. I'm not blaming people if they're not accustomed to listening to themselves. There's many, many reasons why people don't do that. Maybe they've been through some trauma that's unresolved. Maybe there's pressure on them that they don't have the opportunity to do that. Maybe that's a privilege they cannot afford, because if they were to open up the doors to the things that they need to listen to themselves about and to feel internally, maybe if they open those doors, they're not going to be able to resolve them on the moment, and then they won't be able to do the things that they need to do, right? So we've had students, for example, that will come in and talk about how they're dealing with some depression or some anxiety or some other sort of mental health type challenges that we try to refer them out for, because we're not specialists in that. But we try to at least hold space for them and listen to them. But they'll come and they'll say, for example, I've been wanting to come for a while, but I just keep putting it off. And so why is the person putting it off? Because they don't want to open the door to that, right? But in order to more effectively listen to others, and in order to more effectively have care and compassion and love and mercy for others, we have to actually open those doors. And we have to start to listen to ourselves. So for example, right now, this morning, I already mentioned that Ismail didn't want me to go. Alhamdulillah, we got through that. But I also, I tend to get a lot of headaches. It's been a problem since, I don't know when, probably middle school, high school. Maybe I'll die early, who knows. But whenever we tried to get that dealt with by doctors, like, nobody had answers, right? Point is, all I'm saying is that I woke up this morning and I can feel that by the end of the day today, it's very likely I'll have a migraine. And I know, coming into the session right now, that I can already feel it on my face and behind my eyes and stuff like that. And so I know that at this particular moment in time. I know that I had tea this morning, and that was a better choice than coffee, because my energy level's not fully replenished and my day is long. So if I drink coffee too early, I'm going to crash too early and it won't work well, right? So this is I'm just trying to put ideas out, like, I'm trying to listen to myself, that I know these things are going on, and I know, like, I'm going to come and people are going to talk, and I'll probably be a little bit less patient than I normally am, internally. Hopefully nobody will see it, but internally, at least, I know I'll be a little bit more patient than I normally am, because I have these things that are going on, right? So the idea is trying to get to understand ourselves and to know ourselves. And part of that, a big part of that, is building our awareness. So we're going to do an exercise, like I promised. Now that I've done enough talking, we're going to do an exercise. It's generally referred to as the raisin meditation exercise. I brought dates, because it's a Muslim event. So we changed the raisin meditation into a date meditation. I don't actually know if, mashallah, there's good attendance. I don't actually know if we have enough dates, but we're going to find out in the next few moments, inshallah. And I don't know if the people in the hallway are hearing what I'm saying, because if they are, then they'll probably go get us more dates. But in any case, if we run out of dates, you can choose something else. Does anyone have gum? Oftentimes women. Okay, so let's keep the gum as a backup, inshallah. Is there a better way to do this? Split them in half. Might not work because I think they have. Well, I guess you could do it. We could do that, but then everyone's hands will be all over everyone's dates and stuff. We want to get to know each other, but I don't know if we want to get to know each other that well, especially with the flu season. So, yeah, we can start with the sisters, inshallah. Just grab one, and I'm going to give you, we have wipes too afterwards. So don't worry about any of your paper and stuff, just put it on the side somewhere, so you can have your hands free, and then you don't have to worry about the date. So we'll give you the date, and we'll give you wipes. That way you can grab your papers afterwards, inshallah. All right? So let me, I don't know if there's...
Do you want me to volunteer for the sisters?
Sure, if you can pass it around to them, that'd be excellent. And then... What's that? More are coming? All right. So the idea here is that we want to increase our ability, again, to be aware of ourselves. Why this matters? Tayyib, inshallah. They have to work on those dates because they come from the pack. You know the package that has them all mushed together. So they're it's not like the. Anyways, alhamdulillah, it's all good. What we want to try to do is to figure out that self-awareness point, because when we're trying to listen to someone else, this is often what's getting in the way, right? Especially, I think, for parents. So I can at least speak from my own experience that oftentimes when my son is trying to talk to me, I'm distracted by other things, right? And there's a lack of concentration and awareness and focus that's happening there. So he's trying to talk to me, and I'm still thinking about, like, literally in my case, I'm still thinking about, I mean, I don't even want, it's a live stream, so maybe I should be careful the kind of things I say, but I'm still thinking about all kinds of things that I've heard throughout the day. Because in chaplaincy, most of what we do is office hours. It's not like being an imam. People think, like, there's way more FaceTime in chaplaincy than there is in imama. It's interesting. It was a surprise to me. Because as an imam, you go, you lead prayer, you go back to your office, you read some things, you respond to some emails, whatever. Like, that's pretty much everyday life. And then there's a few people you see. Chaplaincy is like all office hours. So, oh, mashallah, we made it, huh? And then I think 2 more people just came in, so it's perfect. There's 1 date each for you. Don't eat it. Yet. You have your chance to eat it, inshallah. I hope nobody ate theirs yet. I should have told you that. If you already ate it, then, you know, pause midway. I'm sorry. All right. So whoever ate their date, here's another round. No, there's no لا تثريب عليكم اليوم. There's no blame on you. I didn't tell you not to eat it, so it's my fault actually. The gorillas are here. All right, so Bismillah. Everyone take a deep breath. So what we're gonna do is a date meditation exercise that revolves around the date. So first thing I want you to do, I'm gonna walk us through it. I should probably get a date. Where did that plate go? Did she take it away? Are there any more? I should get one so I can play along too. All right, mashallah, thank you. All right, first thing we're gonna do, I'll walk through it. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Try to, as I kind of mentioned, try to forget that other people are here. which is also something just for us to be aware of, right? Like when other people around, it's harder for us to get intimate with anything. And sometimes that's for any number of different reasons. Because it feels awkward, because it's weird, because I don't want to feel like I'm not cool, whatever, all kinds of other things, right? So, first thing we want to do with the date is to see it. So just observe the date. It's going to sound funny. Allah actually said, if you want a dalil for this, Allah said, فَلْيَنْظُرُ الْإِنسَانُ إِلَى طَعَامِهِ. Let the person look at their food. It's an extremely profound concept. Maybe afterwards I'll give deeper commentary on that verse, but first thing is just to look at it. You should find, as you look at the date, that there are things you can observe about the structure of the date, about the color, the composition, all of these different things that you probably didn't observe before. Okay, so that's your eyes. Now, as you're touching the date, you think about the way that the date feels. These are all of our different senses, right? Think about the way the date feels. Maybe it's kind of cold. Obviously, it's a little bit slimy. You want to play along? Now the next one is to smell it. See what it smells like. Smell is also a very interesting sense. It's a very, very deep metaphor for spirituality and the experience of God. As is taste. I apologize to the niqabis. Smelling might be harder. Okay, so you smelled it. Now, the next thing, I'm going to tell you all of the next ones together so that you can have some silence while you do it. The next ones are you're going to place it in your mouth, feel it in your mouth, then start to chew it, obviously, and how that feels, and then swallow it, and try to feel as you swallow it and kind of like follow its track as it goes down. Okay? Okay, that's it. There's nothing more to that. You can just pass it around, inshallah. We'll get you guys wipes too. Not trying to discriminate. So I hope that what people found, you may have found it difficult to do it again in the presence of other people. But the idea here is that there's different levels at which you can experience things. Right? Like you could be totally tuned out and take the date and throw it in your mouth and eat it. Or you can really see the date. And like I said, when Allah talks about looking at our food, that's an extremely profound concept. Because if we look at the food, I mean, where is that coming from? What's the story behind that date? There's this little seed that probably went in the ground and a tree came out of it, and dates the fruit showed up on the tree and someone harvested it and it doesn't come off the tree like that, so then there was more to it, and then it got to us somehow, and then we knew that it's beneficial for us to eat it, and you looked at it and it had all this, I mean, how many different types of dates come from these different trees that are all coming from the same ground? It's all really incredible thing. But how closely are we paying attention? Now, listening to someone is very similar. One of the things I always tell people about chaplaincy is that you go to chaplaincy and you do office hours for 3 hours and it literally feels like a 10-hour day. You feel like you've been at work for 10 hours. Feel like you've been at work for a long time. Because like you can listen to people in different ways. And if you listen to someone the way that we just ate this date, you're going to get a whole lot different experience out of listening to them. And they're going to get a whole lot different experience out of being listened to by you. And sometimes that's enough. As strange as that sounds, sometimes that's enough. Because in the end, we all know that we're all going through all kinds of different things. And those things are really difficult sometimes. And sometimes it's just the person, like, they fully embraced me when they listened to me, right? Like they ate the date with their whole thing, the whole being, right? They were actually listening. It's very healing, actually. Really listening to people is very healing. And part of what the Prophet ﷺ did was that he really listened to people. I mean, just think about statements of people that they one of the descriptions of the Prophet ﷺ is that anyone who is in his majlis, anyone who's in his gathering, they felt like they got their due. Everyone felt like it. Everyone walked away satisfied. Anyone who sat in the gathering of the Prophet ﷺ, they felt like they were the most important person in the gathering. Right? And as I mentioned in the khutbah before too, there's times when the Prophet ﷺ, his listening was so profound that he didn't have to say anything. And this is also something that they teach in chaplaincy, is that the role of the chaplain is not really to talk a whole lot. Yarhamakullah. The role of the chaplain is to observe and to be there and to listen. And sometimes that's enough. So this exercise, I hope that everyone, did the thing go around? The tissues and the, anyone else need it? We can send it around. We did it with the date. You can do it really with anything, right? And it's an important exercise to check in like that. Like maybe you're sitting here right now in 5 minutes and you're like, man, this is extremely boring. I really can't. I'm having a hard time dealing with this right now. Just like check in with the pattern on the wall or something. Look at the mountain and just start observing the mountain. But we want to live, right? Part of living is actually observing things. I mean, think about just in this room, how many things are in this room that you probably never really paid attention to before. You just never saw them. Never saw that design. I didn't realize that design has 4 petal type designs and not 3, for example. Or I didn't notice that this is that way or whatever. The way that the speakers are positioned, that the light, that the windows are, what you can see outside the windows, all these. It's a beautiful orientation that you can see that mountain out this window. It's incredible. I don't know if you can see it from that side, but from this side you can see it. The snow peak. Right? Like we want to check in like that. We want to listen to the world. It's very, very important. Okay, so that's exercise number 1. Exercise number 2 is, as I kind of told you, the different things that I'm feeling when I came in here today. Do we need more chairs for the sisters? Doctora? Okay. There's some. Anyways, people do what they want to do, inshallah. I want everyone to take a moment to do that. If you need to close your eyes to do it, close your eyes. Oftentimes it makes it easier, again, because sometimes when I want to listen better and I want to experience more, I close my eyes because I find that my eyes kind of dominate my sensory experience. So as long as my eyes are open, I get kind of distracted. So kind of just, take a moment and check in with yourself. I mentioned that, the different things I mentioned about myself, but you probably have some too. And to be aware of that is important as we move on. Maybe you might have some tension like in your neck, your shoulders, mouth, jaw, any sort of pain. Sometimes you can kind of just recognize the feeling of your body on the chair. All these things help. Okay. Anyone recognize anything that they would like to share before we continue? Maybe something they didn't realize? I realized I'm super nervous and awkward and anxious speaking in front of all of you. I didn't know that I had that anymore, but apparently I do. Anyone? Yeah. Okay. Very good. Yeah. These? Yeah. Yeah. Me too. Alhamdulillah. Perhaps it's better that you can't focus on me. Alhamdulillah. Anyone else? It's challenging because in order to do it, there's a level of vulnerability with one another that's needed. Because now if I open up and I tell you what I'm feeling, I'm putting that in front of all these people. I don't even know most of these people, right? Yeah.
I just noticed I was really content being here and at peace, but when I go really deep inside, the topic gives me a lot of anxiety when it has to do with kids.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure other people can relate to that. Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel. Children is a really big jihad. Anyone else? I'm gonna have to dig super deep and tell you everything about my life, or are you gonna share some things? Alright, maybe as time goes on. So I hope that there's some benefit from that again. And that's something again that you can do anytime. You might get to you're at home or you're at work or you're wherever you might feel, and you start to feel like you're spinning out of control a little bit. It's a good time to check in. Be like, alright, what's going on with me? Am I hungry? Did I not sleep enough? Did this, did that? What is it what's going on here? It's good to do that, to kind of ground ourselves that way. Ground myself in the gorillas. Alright, so now we're going to move on. One of the things I felt was that I had tension here. That's also usually related to my headaches. So depending on how well I'm dealing with the stress of my work, it will affect my sleep and how tense my jaw is in my sleep, and then usually that will have a consequence in my morning. So I was just thinking like, man, I need to relax that thing. What's going on over it? And like loosen up my jaw a little bit. Maybe go get punched or something. So another reason. What affects our responses? So now we get more into the issue. Some of us, maybe we don't have children yet, or we don't have children that are older, or we have children who are younger, whatever it might be. As I said, most of my experiences with people who are older. And so we're talking about like maybe you realize that you don't have much of a relationship with your child. Maybe you realize that you guys can't talk to each other. Maybe you realize that they tried to tell you something that's going on with them recently and you just totally shut them down. Or that you totally lost your cool. And there's a lot of things, like again, all of that's going to go back to this self-awareness piece. One of the common things that we see in Muslim households is a complete and absolute inability to deal with the issue of relationships. And by relationships, I mean those that either lead to or don't lead to marriage. So, maybe a girl, maybe someone's daughter is at an age where she could likely get married. And that's just, you can't even, like, what are you talking about? You talk about marriage in the house? How big of an aib is that? You're not allowed to actually be attracted to anybody in your entire existence. You're supposed to just wait quietly until someone comes along and asks for your hand and we agree with it and everything goes well and now you're married. Khalas, aish, hayatik. Live your life and Allah ma'ak. Allah be with you. Right? That's literally how we do things, which is complete insanity. Right? So we live in a hyper-sexualized society. Right? So how am I going to be... where is my self-regulation and my awareness of myself such that when my child comes to me with these issues, if they come to you, that's probably a good sign. At least they feel like they can talk to you. Or if I need to engage these things with my child, like how am I going to feel about that? So being aware of these kind of things. We may not have children of these ages, but I'm sure we have family members, we have friends, we have experiences, we can relate at some level. So there's two things that often catch us off guard. One is that we don't think that the issue even exists, right? So we don't even know what the issues are in the first place. I'll give you issues that I'm surprised but not surprised about, okay? So I've dealt with a number of cases now of attraction to the same gender. I don't really have any answers for them, but I've dealt with people like that. We've had cases where a sister went to university and lived on campus. Living on campus is crazy. I don't know if people understand this. They don't always. I'm an extremist on this. People sometimes don't like it, but I think I'm right. Living on campus is crazy. You can't control anything when you're on campus. When I lived on campus at UC San Diego, I literally had 7 or 8 neighbors that used to smoke weed 5 times a day. I'm not talking about like once every couple of days or something, 5 times a day. I wish I had chronicled the things that happened when I was a freshman on campus at UCSD. Like, it was insane. And one time we had a case of a sister who's living on campus and her roommate has a boyfriend. So the boyfriend comes and spends the night in their dorm all the time. Like, you're a hijabi in a dorm room with a roommate whose boyfriend is spending the night. You probably weren't expecting that one. All kinds of things. Anything you can imagine, it more or less exists. It exists in our community, with our people and with our children, with our loved ones. So that's one thing. The second thing that sometimes catches us off guard is that we don't think it'll happen to us or to someone that we know. And I think we could just all agree right now that number 2 is a ridiculous proposition. It's just ridiculous. It's just some fairy tale hope that we hold out. Like, inshallah, it'll never happen to me. Inshallah, it won't happen to us. Allah protect all of us and our loved ones and everything else. But it happens. And we don't control that entirely. We control some of the things that we can do. But sometimes you just have to make the best out of the situation. One of the things that I love about the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ is that it's very practical. In contrast to the way that Muslims oftentimes deal with Islam in life, it's very practical. It's not always it's not always the case that you're just like, oh, this is good and this is bad, just do the good one. Sometimes it's like, man, this situation is all bad, and here's the best option I have, is to do these 3 haram things. That's the best option I have, instead of doing these 12 haram things. Like this is actual reality sometimes. So what we want to do right now is just brainstorm really quickly. Each person can do it on their own paper. Maybe come up with like 5 issues that you think young people face. It could be anything. I mean, we could talk about drugs, relationships, you could talk about ideas, you can talk about family issues, whatever. Any angle that you can possibly think of, whatever you want. Shoot for like 5, 7, 10 things on your little pieces of paper. Or if you have a really good memory, you could try it in your memory, but you'll probably have to come up with some sort of mnemonic device to help you remember it, because short-term memory, it's not that good. But maybe 5, 7 things for yourselves. Each person just think about for yourself. Okay? And then we'll move on to the next part. You're going to have time to share them with each other afterwards, so this part is just individual. If you need paper or anything, the team here at IOK, the wonderful, beloved team here at IOK will help you out, inshallah. All right, so now if we can break into groups of about 5 people, okay? I'll assume that can be self-managed, inshallah. Please try to like wander into groups that people that you might not know that well. It'll make it more interesting. And first, of course, share your name. Maybe share your name and where you live, for example, because I think some people drove. And each person in the group share one of the things that they had on their list, and see, like, just have a little bit of a conversation around it, you know. But again, make sure to practice your listening, inshallah, and learn people's names and stuff like that. So just kind of like stand up and do it, because otherwise we're gonna have to move the chairs back and all that kind of stuff. So just stand up and like float into little groups and talk to each other, inshallah, for a few minutes. Each person, you can go. And each person share one and figure that out, inshallah. And make sure to make room for each other. تفسحوا في المجالس يفسح الله لكم. ما شاء الله. So Alhamdulillah. Good. Barakallah fi. Mm. اللهم صل نبي الرحمة سيدنا محمد. All right. Yeah. Okay, Bismillah. Let's come back. Let's come back to our seats, inshallah. Barakallahu fikum. Finish up your point and then come back. Sorry, it's hard to choose a spot to interrupt. Bismillah. If people can come back to their seats. Barakallahu fikum. I'll just say something while you do that. I know sometimes, especially for men, it's challenging to do this whole being aware of your own emotions and engaging them and all of that kind of stuff. And you know, I also come from that tradition, so to speak, the no emotion tradition. And if I didn't feel that this is something absolutely essential to our relationship with God and our relationships with people, I wouldn't push it. And I wouldn't have cared to do something about it, or have started to try to do something about it in my own life if I didn't feel that it was important. The thing that kind of pushed me over the top with all this stuff was that, you know, like you'd read the biographies of Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh, and like there's no doubt as to who Umar was in his strength, right? And then you also read that Umar used to have like streaks on his face from where he would cry, because he would be crying all the time. So you're just like, wow, subhanAllah, that's very interesting. And so the only, all of it is actually fake unless it's real. And if it's real, then you have to feel it on all sides. It's like one of our teachers talks about in terms of being a servant of God, is that if you really want to know God, you have to know God in all of His names. And that's not always going to be fun. Like when you know God as Ar-Rahman, that's going to be a beautiful and a wonderful day. And when you know God as Al-Jabbar, it's going to be a rough day. Or if you know Him as Al-Qahhar, as the compelling and powerful, like that's going to be a tough day. But you're going to know God. And in order to do what we need to do as a people in our relationship with God and in our service of others, we have to actually dig deeper. We have to feel the spectrum. Which means that we might find ourselves like feeling a whole lot more. And then we have to figure out how we're going to deal with that. Right? It's really an incredible thing. So now we're going to do another exercise that's internal. Anyone want to share some of the things that they thought? Maybe we can take a handful of things they thought that young people go through. We're talking about other people now, not yourself. It should be easier to, it's not, yeah. Either one, sure. Okay, very good. Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot more suicides than we think. the community doesn't really have access to those numbers, but the people who work in mortuary services usually have a better idea. And there's a lot more suicides than we think. The last number I heard in Orange County was in the dozens each year. So, you know, anything else? Any other issues people might face? Yes, Kashif. Mm-hmm. Okay, very good. Yeah, mashallah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, the cultural identity issue is real. Because, you know, if you distance people from their cultural heritage, whatever it might be, and you encourage them to embrace elements of the cultural heritage that they're growing up in, the question is, what is that going to look like? If you don't have a healthy modeling of that, then you don't have anything. And that was one of the great contributions of the Nation of Islam. For all of the issues of theology aside, probably a really great contribution of the Nation of Islam was to very clearly model something that is Muslim and in America, very clearly. Like, you don't even think about it, and maybe some people don't have these experiences, but at least in certain pockets at certain points in time, like if you see a black man with a bow tie, there's no question that's a Muslim. Like that's pretty. Think about that for a second. It's a bow tie. It's not like a kufi or a hijab or something. It's a bow tie. And this became a cultural icon, right? So what's the cultural thing? Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. 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 MashaAllah. Yeah, excellent. Yeah, shaming and guilt. Guilt is it's our module of choice in the Muslim community. Inside families, on the minbar, everywhere. Guilt is like it's our method of choice. It's a very interesting phenomenon. It would be interesting to see some research on that. Maybe communication people can do it. Mm-hmm. Anyone else? Maybe one or two more. That was a really good one. Thank you. Okay, peer pressure. Very good. We'll do one more. Anyone from the sisters? Okay, yeah, if none of the... Hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. Choice is really, it can be very challenging. Choice, yeah, having too many choices. Very good, mashallah. Okay, so these are just some of the things. I hope that you found some joy in talking to each other. It's usually, you could attend Muslim events for months upon months upon months and never know the person sitting next to you, which is kind of a scary concept, but you could. So it's good to talk to each other a little bit. You're going to get to do more of that. Oh my God! actually, wow, we have a really big problem right now in the time. Oh my God. Subhanallah. So, we're going to have to cut that one out. We'll go to that one. Okay. All right. Yeah, maybe. Who knows? We'll see. All right. Okay, so everyone needs to now choose one issue for a young person, whether they're young or not. All of us are young, mashallah. And you need to think about it in a way that's particular, because you're going to be role modeling it. So, not just like, say for example, the issue is there's, which one did we just talk about? Say for example, we're talking about shame and guilt. So you need to specifically think about an actual individual case where there's a lot of shame and guilt going on that's affecting the relationship between the child and the parent, right? And get into the case, because what we're going to do right now for the next 20 minutes, we're going to have to be very you're going to break into groups, 2 people. Each group is 2 people. Again, if you go with someone you know, it actually might be easier to go with someone you don't know. It might even be easier, because there's an awkwardness involved in this. One person is going to be the child or the young person, and the other person is going to be the parent. Okay? And then you're going to switch. All right? We're going to switch afterwards. So think about your case. I don't care who you decide to be the parent first or the child first, but think about the case, and whoever the child is, you have to really own your role. All right? So that's why I said know what you're talking about, feel it. And so we missed the exercise before it, so we won't be able to feel it the way you need to. But feel it, like, okay, I am this young person, this is my problem, and this is me talking to the parent. And all of the emotions that are going to come in and everything else and whatever, bring them in. Don't exaggerate it. They're still your parents. Everyone's going to have adab and stuff like that, inshallah. We don't want screaming in the musalla. And then the parent, like, really feel like it's your child. Okay? Really try to feel like it's your child. And what are you going to do? How are you going to listen to them? Are you going to hear them? Are you going to let them finish? So here's some things to think about. Okay? For the listener, here's some things you can do as the listener. You can paraphrase. So they're telling you something, you can paraphrase it before you respond to it to make sure that you're understanding it correctly. Okay, so they're saying something. So this is what you're going through, and you can say it back to them, and they'll tell you whether or not you're right. That's usually a good place to start. A lot of times what happens in conversations is we're arguing back and forth, and we're not even on the same place. Like one person's running laps up here, and the other one's running laps down here, and you're just running a bunch of laps. You're like, what is going on? So make sure you understand first. That's number 1. Number 2, you can ask clarifying questions. Okay, you can ask clarifying questions, not accusatory or investigative questions, but clarifying questions, so that you can better understand the situation. Another thing to think about is expressing empathy. This is also a part that I've heard from a lot of young people. They would really appreciate for their parents to just express that they understand. I've over and over again, I had the experience in the Muslim community. Most Muslim kids don't know anything about the life of their parents, what they've been through, anything. There's no disclosure. So it could be something as simple as, yeah, you know, when I came here and I first started working, I was having a really hard time negotiating my relationships with my coworkers too. Now you've at least expressed that you can understand what they're going through. Consider your body language. So the body language can be engaged, it can be disengaged, it can be confrontational, it can be welcoming, whatever it might be. And avoid judgment and giving advice while listening. So the point while you're listening is to listen. It's not to interrupt and give advice. It's not to tell the person, what are you talking about? Just get over it. That's not the point. While you're listening. While you're listening, listen. Eventually your turn will come. You can say whatever you need to say. Okay? For the child who's bringing up the issue, try not to spend 8 minutes explaining the issue because we just don't have the time. So normally, ideally, we would take like a good 15, 20 minutes per each side, but we don't have that much time. So we're going to do 10 minutes per each side. So maybe you don't like choose a huge major issue, but try to engage it a little bit, okay? So break up into groups of 2, and I will put the timer on. In 1 minute, I'm going to put a timer on for 8 or 9 minutes, and then we'll deal with it from there, inshallah. Okay? Yalla, bismillah. Find someone. Yalla. Remember, go to someone else. That's the idea. You can. You missed that part. All right. If you haven't already started, your timer is starting now. For about 2 more minutes before you switch sides. Okay. Pause. Okay. We're gonna press pause and try to switch gears. They're like, no, we can't. We have to resolve it still. All right. So just as a reminder, they're not fiction. They're not nonfiction. They're based on a true story. So they're make believe. All right. So wherever it goes, don't assume something about the person. Inshallah. All right. If we can bring it in, because you have to switch roles still. Okay. You're gonna have to switch roles, okay? Just switch roles. So take a deep breath. Erase everything that just happened, because now you're on the other side. Erase everything that just happened and switch the position that you're in and restart. All right? Yalla, bismillah. Okay. All right, let's wrap up so we can do some other wrapping up, inshallah. People who moved, you can go back to your seats. Barakallahu fikum. We can use that. If people can go back to their seats and let's wrap up because we only have 15 minutes left. MashaAllah. Okay, can we try to come back so we can wrap up and finish? It's the worst part because I would prefer everyone just talks to themselves anyways instead of having to be focused up here. So, alhamdulillah, I'm sorry to break up your conversations. I suspect that some people weren't role playing, but I won't prosecute you. Role playing is very challenging, especially if we're not used to it, right? But it's very, very important. Someone was in a class that we did that in at Bayan University, and we did this role-playing chaplaincy session. And so there was a brother who brought his issue to the chaplain, and it got real. Like it was role playing. It was they were acting, and it got real. Like you could feel people getting emotional in the session. It was amazing, but you kind of have to do it, and it goes back to the whole vulnerability, self-awareness, like all of these kind of things. Like, and then the student, I guess you could say, who was going to the chaplain, afterwards he told the group, he's like. He said, "You guys don't know what it feels like to be listened to by so and so." It was incredible. I mean, he's like, they're acting. It wasn't a real scenario, right? He's like, just the way he listened, it's just you have no idea being like that. So it's important to practice these things. Any quick observations anyone had from the experience? Any observations or reflections anyone had that they want to share? They think will be beneficial? Yeah.
For me, it was difficult not to interrupt and give them my advice. I feel like that's something that's difficult for me. It was actually really nice to hear her speaking, letting her express how she was feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big issue. A lot of people feel like they're not being heard. They don't actually. They are not being heard. They feel that way, and it's true. They're not actually being heard. Yeah.
And I was explaining why when I go to non-Muslim events to be with my friends, I like how he answered me that, you know what, those people, they have goodness in them. So when he said that, it made me want to listen to what he has to say. I see them as good people, and when he tells me there is goodness in them, it makes me, okay, we're on the same page now.
So it's an act actually of empathy, right? And there's many layers of listening. Like part of this is saying, all right, if he wants to go to this thing, why is it he wants to go to this thing? And I could think about it in any number of ways. And one of the good ways I could think about it was, well, he likes to be around these people because these are good people. And so I'm going to affirm that point, right? As a means by which to enter into the conversation. There's a really good metaphor they use in chaplaincy that I think is awesome and might help people to understand a little bit of how you do this. And that's the metaphor of the forceful host versus the respectful guest. The forceful host versus the respectful guest. So one way of listening to people is like the forceful host. Right? Take this, do that, do this, push everything, sit over there, eat this, you have to eat more, all of these kind of things, right? So sometimes they're not bad, but I'm just saying this is one approach. The other approach to listening to someone is the approach of the respectful guest. The respectful guest is what? You're welcoming me into your space. I'll take whatever you give me. I'm not going to ask for anything. I'll respond to whatever's in front of me. Like, it's very different. So sometimes the imagery helps. So think about like this imagery might help a little bit. So we only have 10 minutes. There's a couple of things I want to mention. The reason why I did this is because it's probably not what many people were expecting when they came to this event today, and we still do have one more activity, but only 2 people are going to engage in it, and the rest of us will watch, and it's pretty simple, but it'll make the last point, is that one of the biggest issues we see with young people is in their relationship with their parents. And I think that it's a good sign that the people who are here. That's a really good sign, and inshallah these will be exceptional cases, but that is really one of the big places. And it's not necessarily that the parents are to blame, just to be clear. Sometimes, usually in all relationships, there's blame on everyone. It's usually the way relationships go. Some might have more blame than others, but that is a big issue. And especially when you get to like the college age, late high school age, college age, people are not children anymore. They may not be where we would like them to be intellectually or in their maturity or any number of other things, but they're still, at least they don't think they're children anymore. And so it's a whole different level of wisdom and understanding and engagement than maybe it is when someone is 5 years old or 4 years old. Even still, there's probably a lot of commentary to take place there, but we won't go into that right now. The other big issue we see is there's just a lot of pressure on people. It's just hard. It's not easy. It's not easy for so many reasons. But one of the reasons is everything you could possibly throw at Islam is being thrown at Islam. All the doubts, all of the political issues, all of the social issues, all of the pressure, it's all there. And most of us in the room are what we would call post 9/11 or pre 9/11 people. Our reality is the pre 9/11 reality. There's a few exceptions in the room, but most of us, that's our reality. Which means that we grew up and for the most part found ourselves and our place in the world and started to make sense of it and all of that kind of stuff in a world wherein 9/11 had not happened. The war on terror did not exist. I mean, we'll leave the political commentary for now, but for the most part, the war on terror did not exist. 9/11 did not happen. Young people who are growing up here after 9/11, that's a whole different reality. You've literally been under attack your entire life, psychologically. That has major consequences. I don't think we can begin to understand. I don't think we're going to understand what the consequences are of that for a little bit longer. We're starting to now, but it's going to take some more time. And at least we need to recognize like we're all in this together. So parents, children, adults, mentors, uncles, aunties, everyone, we're all in this together and we all need each other. And if we could just slow down on the criticism sometimes, slow down on the passing judgment, slow down on the being rough and harsh and all of this kind of stuff and just like hold each other up, we would be a lot better off. The last thing that I want to mention that I'll have to say it afterwards. I can't say it before. There was someone sent from the live stream 2 things. I'll just mention them real quick. They sent me a message. Repeat questions, yeah. And then there's 2 issues that we're thinking about. So we talked about some different issues that people face. Boys dating non-Muslim girls at college with the intention of converting them later for marriage. I didn't really want to get into all the issues and commenting on them. I just wanted to raise them and recognize that we need to deal with them together. There's no singular answer for things. We need to learn how to deal with one another, and we need to learn how to have wisdom. And eventually maybe we can get to the point of the Arab proverb, which I love, which says, Arsin hakiman wala tuwasi. Send someone who's wise and don't give them advice. Right? Like every case, it's hard to comment on every case. So develop some wisdom and live life, and then just leave it alone. Let the people handle the things themselves. So we need to learn. We need to benefit from each other. Why I didn't tell you all the issues that young people are going through and so on. Why? Because you already know them. You do the exercise and you write them down and you ask each other. You already know what they are. I can tell you the ones that I see more often, but that's what I see. I deal with a very particular demographic and a very small group of people and so on and so forth. And there's all kinds of issues. We already know what they are. to figure out how we're going to deal with them by listening to each other, by engaging with one another, by exercising wisdom and patience, by understanding ourselves and bettering ourselves and being aware of ourselves and bringing what's best into the world. Inshallah, everything will play its course, you know. But dating people with that's just all a mess. Dating non-Muslims at college with the intention of converting them later for marriage. Rule number one, we don't convert people. That's the domain of God. You know, He is Al-Hadi. It's one of my pet peeves when someone comes to the masjid like, oh, I brought so-and-so, they want to take their shahada. I'm like, alhamdulillah. Like, now this is the 12th person I've converted. I'm like, taqillah ya akhi, you're not converting anyone. This is a serious aqidah problem. You don't convert people. Oh, don't make a big deal out of the language. Language matters. Don't convert people. Anyways, dating's a problem. So dating non-Muslims with the intention of marrying them in the first place is another problem. Boys and girls struggling with reconciling their same-sex attraction and their faith. That's a very tough one. Like I said, I've dealt with a number of these cases. I don't have any good answers. Patience is not an easy thing. And it's very difficult. As a community, the big thing that we need to do is we need to have compassion. We may not agree, we may not be able to relate, we may not be able to any number of things. But one thing that's true is if someone truly feels attracted to the same gender, that's a really tough thing to go through in the Muslim community, with an understanding that this is not acceptable in our religion, right? Which there's not really any room for interpretation on. And that's hard. You know, there's no one you can talk to. You can't talk to your family. You can't talk to anyone in the community. You can't do anything about it. It's a really tough place to be. So we ask Allah to help our brothers and our sisters, inshallah. The last activity, I need 2 volunteers. No, we're not done. 2 minutes, 3 minutes. 3 minutes. 2 volunteers, and they have to be the same gender. 2 volunteers that are the same gender. And yes, one of you will be wearing this blindfold. So it's only for the brave. It's not very complicated. It's very simple. You're not going to be embarrassed. I'm not going to humiliate you. 2 volunteers. You sure? Someone has to raise their hand themselves. No raising hands for others. Okay, so we have a brother. We need one more brother. All right? Not all of you jump up at once. One more brother. What's your name? Said. Oh, mashallah. How are you? I didn't recognize you. MashaAllah. Anyone else? Yalla, bismillah. We're running out of time. Okay, come up, Ahmed. Bismillah. And what's your name? Ahmed. Tfaddal, ya Ahmed. Are you going to be the blindfold?
Yeah, I'll take it.
Are you sure? All right. Bismillah. I'll let you put it on because I don't want to mess up your hair. All right. Yeah. You can mostly not see. It doesn't work 100%. So, you just stay there. Nobody move. Inshallah. We'll see if this works. The mic's perfect because you can't tell where I am, right? All right. Let's see. All right. So Ahmed, Ahmed, there's a microphone placed on the floor in this room. Did you see where I placed it? Okay, don't tell him. Okay. Sa'id, you're not allowed to talk. You're not allowed to say anything. Ahmed, you're allowed to talk and say whatever you want, and you need to get him to pick that microphone up. Mm-hmm. Oh, I love it. خلي أحمد يشتغل. Let Ahmed do it. If everyone jumps in, it's harder, by the way, because then you're hearing 10 voices. Okay. Sit down. Interesting move. Interesting move. You got it. MashaAllah. MashaAllah. Okay. Said, come back. Come back. All right. Put the blindfold back on. Yeah, don't worry. Can someone just put this somewhere? Anyone? Yeah, just put it somewhere. Inshallah. And I will watch. Okay. All right. So we're going to go and get the microphone, okay? It's very stressful because you can't see anything. It's going to be all right. Give me your arm. Okay. Come this way. Follow me. Now we're going down. And there you go. All right. MashaAllah. You're done. Barakallah feekum. Thank you, Saad. All right. That's my last point. Inshallah, everyone can remember this one. The most important thing that we can do in parenting is that. Okay? That's the most important thing that we can do. Usually in parenting, we do a lot of talking. And we're not actually doing the things that we're talking about. Right? And so there's a lot of confusion. A lot of confusion. So if you need to invest and if you take away nothing, take away one thing, do that. Walk the walk with your family. Inshallah, it will have great benefit. صلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق